I have more books. Since the last time we spoke, some new books have come into my home. Bought myself some, I received some late Christmas presents, and I've been sent some by publishers. So rather than let this stack next to me grow any taller, I thought I'll film a book haul, I'll show them all to you, and then they can find their new homes on my bookcases. Otherwise, this video is pretty self-explanatory, so let's get into the book haul. So I'm going to start with this book here, which I was sent by the publisher Michael Joseph, and I am so excited to read. So this only just came out in February, it's a new release, and it's The Morrigan by Kim Curran. And if you're not familiar, the Morrigan is actually a figure of Celtic mythology. She particularly crops up a lot in Irish and Scottish folklore, which isn't surprising given their shared link to the Gaels, and I am so excited for this. I'm just super eager for more books which are inspired by various Celtic traditions, as a lot of those are the stories I grew up on, and I also just really enjoy them, so I'm excited to see them explored in more detail in fiction, and B, because I think the Morrigan in particular is a fascinating figure. She's usually thought of as a battle goddess, and yeah, I'm just so excited to read a book which is inspired by her. Like, I love to see the continuation of folkloric tradition through modern day fiction, and to see what authors do differently and how they put their unique spin on it. So I'm just so excited for this book. Like, I didn't need to read the blurb or know anything else about it to know I wanted to read it. And to be honest, the blurb doesn't even give that much away. It very much just implies that it is the story of this figure, this goddess perhaps, throughout the years and her different guises. So I'm just excited to jump in and see what happens. Whilst we're here, let's continue with the theme of books inspired by earlier literature, because my next book is The Legend of Maneka by Kritika H. Rao, and this book is inspired by Hindu literature, specifically spirits known as Asparas, who are dancers who are associated with sensuality, and the god Indra. And this story specifically is following one specific Asparas, Maneka, finding her own like sense of identity and what her sensuality means to her, and potentially a connection between her and another man. So I think this one does constitute romantasy, or at least it's a fantasy with a romance, which you know I love, so I'm really excited. Plus look at that cover. Like, is this not everything? And I was sent this by the publisher as well, who are HarperCollins. And completely different from those two books, however, is my next book, which is a YA thriller, and I've actually already read this one. I picked it up immediately when it arrived, and it was sent to me by Simon & Schuster, and that's Till Death by Buseo Matuluko. And this is, well, this to start with is a YA thriller I have been eagerly anticipating since I first saw the author talk about it on TikTok, and I'm pleased to say it did not disappoint. Like, if you're a fan of Holly Jackson or One of Us is Lying, those kind of like book series, then this is perfect for you. It's about Lara, whose cousin is getting married in Nigeria, so she and her family go to Lagos in Nigeria a few weeks before the wedding in order to help prep, because they're part of the wedding party. However, she discovers that her cousin Lara is receiving disturbing letters and threats, and someone is invested in this wedding not happening. Plus, we also know from a flash forward at the very beginning that there will be a poisoning at the wedding itself. That's not a spoiler because that is literally in like the first 2 pages, and then you're seeing sort of like the build up to that and what happens, and how the crime is solved and how it's all unravelled by Lara, who is a true crime buff, which again, like I said, if you like Holly Jackson, if you like characters who are really into their true crime but maybe get themselves into a little bit of trouble but also like bring a new perspective and look into things that other people are ignoring, then you'll really enjoy this. It's a really compelling mystery with a lot of like rich background in terms of the family dynamics and the wedding and the friendships, and also just like Lara's personal journey, because she's just leaving high school, about to attend uni, and that big transition period of her life. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I did actually buy myself this next book though, and that is A Rivalry of Hearts by Taisonia Odette, and this is the first book in the Fae Flings and Corset Strings series. Now, before I talk about what this book is about, I have to show you beneath the dust jacket, because look how beautiful this is. This is one of, I think, my favourite covers I now own. Like, this naked hardback, it's tempting just to take the dust jacket off, as pretty as it is, because this is stunning. And this is historical fantasy romance, so it's combining so many genres I love. I particularly love historical romance. It was my entry into the romance genre, and recently I've been particularly into my fantasy romance. I feel this is going to combine all of my loves. And just to further mesh things I love, it's also about a romance writer. So our main character, Edwina, writes romance novels, and I believe she gets herself into a little bit of trouble by striking a deal with a fairy, which of course you're never to do. And what I'm hoping for this one is for it to be light and cozy and charming and a little bit steamy, so fingers crossed. On the topic of fairies, however, we have the newest book in the Emily Wilde series. So this is by Heather Fawcett, and it's book 3, Emily Wilde's Compendium of Lost Tales. The first book in this series being Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, which you've probably seen everybody and their grandmother talk about at this point. I've talked about it, I loved it, I know so many other people love it. It is a cozy, charming, historical academic fantasy novel about a fairy scholar, about a woman in what I think is sort of like the late early 1900s, who studies fairies at the University of Oxford in the very literal sense. Like, she can go out and study them in the wild, in the field. It's acknowledged that they are real, and she's on a expedition in a very specific small island to learn more about their local fae at the beginning of book 1. And she also has an annoying colleague who she likes but doesn't like, etc. And she might have to watch out because her research could prove more dangerous than she intended. I won't say any more than that because obviously this is book 3, but I'm just very excited to get to Orbit sent it to me, and I'm very, very grateful to them for that, and I cannot wait to read more about Emily Wilde and her companion. Another book I've already read, however, is Woven by Gold by Elizabeth Hellens. This is actually book 2 in a series. I forget what the series is called, but the first book is called Bonded by Thorns, and I've already read Bonded by Thorns, obviously, because otherwise why would I have read this? And I have book 3 winging its way to me already. Like, it has been ordered because I need to know what happens next. This is such a fun romantasy series. It's about Rosalina, who lives in the mortal world, but she stumbles into the fairy realm. It starts off as a sort of Beauty and the Beast retelling, but she ends up in this castle with 4 princes who have been cursed, not just one. So it is a polyamorous why choose romance, and because of the 4 princes and their links to different kingdoms or princedoms or queendoms in this fairy world, there's like a lot beyond the castle. Like, it's not a book where they're solely in the castle and they go beyond it and you learn more about the different realms, like the autumn realm, the winter realm, and it's a lot of fun. Like, it really builds on that Beauty and the Beast structure and like goes above and beyond. And obviously I really enjoyed book 1, or I wouldn't have picked up book 2, and I picked it up immediately. I think I read 1 book between them. Like, I immediately devoured it. And this book is over 500 pages, which is not the kind of length of book I read a lot these days. Like, I do not often read a book over 500 pages, and I certainly don't read it in like 4 days, which I did with this. So these are just an absolute ton of fun. They're really quick, fun, immersive, like escapist reads I would really recommend, and I can't wait to read book 3. Alright, then we have a book which I did buy myself but didn't know I was getting. And that's because it is the latest book in the Evernight subscription box. So Evernight is a like spin-off subscription box, shall we say, of Illumicrate, which is only every 3 months, which I really enjoy, because as much as I enjoy monthly subscription boxes, they can sort of get on top of me a little bit, whereas because I'm a mood reader, I've managed to keep up quite well with the Evernight book box, and it is all horror. And what is excellent about Evernight as well is that thus far a lot of the books I've received were books I wanted anyway. Not that I don't like to be surprised by a book, but I knew I wanted to read this book, which is Bat Eater by Kylie Lee Baker, ever since I first read the description, and having a beautiful special edition of it definitely helps. So I'm just gonna pop my tea down there. These are the sprayed edges, the bats, everything. This is what the whole thing looks like, and then they have these beautiful illustrations on the end papers. Then, just sorry, everything's so stunning. This is one of my favourite naked hardbacks I've ever seen. Like, the gold foiling, the shininess. Like, this is one of the most beautiful books I think Illumicrate has done ever. And the dust jacket is reversible to a sort of adapted version of the original cover. But obviously the outside doesn't matter if the inside doesn't sound just as good, and it does. Like I said, this is a horror novel, and it's about a woman whose sister is pushed in front of a train on the New York Underground, I think it is. I'm pretty sure it's the New York Underground. Cora Zheng is a crime scene cleaner, but the bloody messes don't bother her, not when she's already witnessed the most horrific thing possible, her sister being pushed in front of a train. Maybe it doesn't actually say. But anyway, she was pushed in front of a train, and her sister overheard someone say bat eater, so the assumption is there was a sort of racist motivation there. Still, I believe a few years have passed since that incident happened, and there is now a spurt of killings in Chinatown that she thinks might be connected to her sister. So it's like multi-layered with her job and what happened to her sister and what's happening now in Chinatown, and I imagine it's going to explore race and racism, especially re-discrimination that is specifically directed to people who are Chinese, and I think it's going to be incredibly compelling, and I'm really excited to read it. I think I mentioned in the intro to this video though that I did have a belated Christmas present to show you, but oh, was this present worth waiting for. So this was my Christmas gift from my lovely, wonderful best friend Jill, who many of you know. She has cropped up on my socials many times in the past, and we used to live together, and this year she outdid herself. So this was what she got me for Christmas, and it is one of the volumes in the Library of Esoterica series by Taschen. So Taschen are broadly a sort of art book publisher, but I find they have a lot of great books which also sort of delve into bits of history as well as art, because obviously those two things can be very strongly linked. And they have this series called the Library of Esoterica, of which I already own two, so there's often one in the background there behind me, which is the one on witchcraft. I also have one on sacred sites, and there are two more, there's 5 in total, and now I have 3 thanks to Jill. This is the volume on astrology, and it is basically a visual history of astrology. These are chunky books, but they are beautiful inside. So this book, I imagine, I haven't had a proper chance to delve into it yet, is going to trace astrology through visual culture and media for centuries, if not more than that. I don't even know what to expect, but I'm very excited for it. Plus, I'm not gonna lie, art books are very inspiring for me as a writer. I really appreciate just flipping through them for that regard too, but aside from art, it does have a lot of text. Apparently I'm not showing you the text heavy pages, but there is a bunch of text too, and it's a big book, so I know it's going to be full of really interesting information. The contents includes a section on planets, a section on the zodiac such as Aries, Taurus, etc., as well as chapters on sacred geometry and other things I'm really not familiar with but interested in learning more about. Diagrams of the heart. No idea where that is, but can't wait to find out. Not entirely unrelated, I actually have another book which was sent to me by the publisher Thames and Hudson, and that is Compendium of the Occult, Arcane Artifacts, Magic Rituals and Sacred Symbolisms by Liz Williams. Another book which sort of takes a visual approach to history, sort of looking at visual media and depictions of the arcane and the occult throughout the millennia. I've already had a flick through this and read little bits here and there. We've got so much covered in here, from ancient Greek and Egyptian spells, demonology, standing stones, Freemasons, good luck charms, amulets, astrology, so much, like a really, really broad, expansive view of these themes throughout place and time for, like I said, thousands of years. I think brings some really interesting artifacts and sources and texts together into one. And so far from what I've read, I think this could be a really great starting point for this kind of topic, and I'm excited to read more. Here are some examples of the pages. This is a spread on Norse gods, some information on the witch trials, Babylonian and Assyrian curses, and yeah, so much more. Continuing with the non-fiction theme, I bought myself this book in the Waterstones 50% off like Christmas sale. Like after Christmas they do a sort of hardback sale going into the new year, and I ended up picking this up, which had been on my TBR, and that's Poet, Mystic, Widow, Wife, The Extraordinary Lives of Medieval Women by Hetta Howes. And if you haven't already caught it, the last video I filmed was all about Arthurian literature, medieval texts and medieval history, particularly with a focus on women in medieval history, because I had a few people signal that they were interested in the books I'd used for research in writing my novel, The Lady of the Lake. So I filmed that video, and this book I did briefly mention because I haven't actually read it yet, but I'm really excited to. It just wasn't out when I was doing my research. But just because I finished that book doesn't mean I'm not interested in learning more, so I'm very excited to get stuck in, particularly because it's looking at written evidence, written sources, written material from women themselves, so women's voices. And whilst we're on the topic, how can I not mention that I received an actual physical proof copy of my novel. So this is The Lady of the Lake. This comes out on May 15th and is published by Michael Joseph for an imprint of Penguin, and it is an adult medieval fantasy novel which reimagines Arthurian legends, written by yours truly. I did obviously film a whole video dedicated to this book where I talk on and on and on about it for, I don't know, like 15 minutes or something. So, you know, if you want more information, you can check that out. But I did receive a physical proof from my publishers. The final thing is going to be a hardback with foiling, which, oh, that's so exciting. But to have a physical proof in my hands is just so special. Although I've already published a few books traditionally in the past, because of just sort of like the types of book those have been, I've never received a physical ARC before. So this is like a really special, momentous occasion for me. Like, it's a real book. It's a real book. And it's just so fun to have in my hand and like see it all printed in front of me. Like, look, they included my reading playlist which I created for the book, so you can listen to the kind of music I was listening to when I wrote it. I've got all my cast of characters in there, and then you've got all the chapters, which I can't show you because those are secret, and because I don't want to spoil anything for you. But yeah, it's just, I don't know, it's so exciting. And if you will permit me, I thought I could read you the blurb, because I didn't actually write this blurb. You might not know this, but rarely do authors write their own blurbs. My editor wrote the blurb, and it's so interesting to see someone else summarize your book or introduce your book. I really enjoy that. I think it takes away some of the pressure. I think I would find writing a blurb very, 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 very difficult. But this is the blurb for The Lady of the Lake. Lady Vivian leaves the lakes of the far north, tasked with capturing the heart and hand of Camelot's young prince Arthur. But it is Arthur's sister, Morgan, who captures Vivian's eye. Fierce and headstrong, Morgan sees another path, one she and Vivian can carve for themselves in this world built for knights and kings. But in this kingdom, eyes are everywhere and no one is as they seem, and when Arthur pulls the legendary sword from the stone, his closest allies will do all they can to tear Vivian and Morgan apart. Can their love survive the dark forces at work in Camelot? A spellbinding, sapphic retelling of the Arthurian enchantress Vivian, the Lady of the Lake. I'm so happy, I'm so excited, and I'm so proud, and I can't wait for this to be out there in the world, and I hope if you pick it up you do enjoy it. Alright, enough about my own books. The next book I have in front of me is another one which I've already read, and that is That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Human by Kimberly Lemming. So this is the third book in the Meet and Mishaps series, which is a like high fantasy romance series, which very, very much gives me like Dungeons and Dragons adventure vibes with steamy romances. Like, it's such a fun combo. They're really comedic. Love, love, love the tone of them, and I've read all three. I think there's going to be more. Like, it's not a trilogy, it's not the end of the series, and I'm looking forward to more coming out in the future. But I originally started with book 2, which I know, like, it is what it is. I read book 2, and at the beginning of this year I finally got around to reading book 1, which then just made me need more of this world, so I bought and read book 3 like immediately. This was so much fun. It's about a human woman and a dragon who are fated mates and get up to some wild adventures. I don't want to say much more than that because I don't want to give anything away for the previous 2 books, but it is just the perfect combo of humour, romance and fantasy adventure. That's what these books are. They are so much fun. I cannot emphasise that enough, so I would highly recommend checking them out. Plus, look at the illustrations. Like, the front covers are gorgeous. Then another book which isn't actually out yet, another one that comes out in May, I think, actually, yeah, and that is The Knight and the Moth, sorry, that's the title here, by Rachel Gillig. And I am so excited that I was sent a proof of this. Like, I feel like this is quite a coveted item, so I'm feeling very honoured that I actually got a physical ARC. I had this in my most anticipated releases of the year, and that has not changed. I only received it a few days ago, but I'm going to be reading this very, very soon. And I believe it's a gothic fantasy romance, which tick, tick, tick. And it follows a prophetess and a knight who have no choice but to go on a quest together. And the final cover, you have to look it up because it is It is beautiful. Oh, and that's another one that's published by Orbit. I actually did buy another book in the Waterstones half price sale as well, I just remembered. This one also came from that sale, and that is The Hotel by Daisy Johnson, which is another book I have been so eagerly anticipating and I'm very excited to have in my hands. It's this tiny little hardback, so I should read it soon because it will probably be very, very quick. And it's set at a haunted hotel, aka the title, The Hotel, which I believe is a hotel that was built on haunted land. Don't know what happened there exactly, maybe there's bodies buried there, but lots of people go to this hotel, which is in the Fens of England, and have a lovely time. It's great, grand, wonderful. But apparently if you're a woman who stays in room 63, you do not have such a good time. You have a very bad time, and this is the stories of all of those women and their experiences of the haunting and the haunting that followed them after their visit to the hotel. No idea what else to expect, but Daisy Johnson is a beautiful writer. I've read her work before, so I know this is going to be wonderful. Another book in a series. I've had a lot of sequels in this video, but that's because I've been very much in the continuing series mood recently. You know, when you read a book in a series and you just have to read the next one. Well, that's also what happened here. So this is the third book in the If Shakespeare Were an Auntie series by Nisha Sharma, which is a contemporary romance trilogy. And I read book 1 when it first came out, but I only got around to book 2, Tastes Like Shikar, at the very beginning of this year. It might have been like the second book I read this year, and I loved it. I loved Dating Dr. Dill, but I loved Tastes Like Shikar even more. It was so good that I immediately ordered book 3, and I'm definitely going to be getting to this ASAP. Each book follows a different couple within a friendship group. We have the initial 2 characters in book 1 who meet and fall in love, etc. And her 2 best friends and his 2 best friends are slowly becoming couples throughout the books. And this one, I believe, involves a fake engagement where they have to pretend to be dating in front of their families because they've both sort of like been done dirty by them. They're both feeling a little bit resentful and they want to show them, and for whatever reason an engagement means that. Like, I don't know the full context yet, but given that I've met these characters time and time again now in the previous 2 books, I'm so excited to see their relationship develop. Like, I think this one's going to be so good. I have such high hopes. And then last but certainly not least, we have Want, collected by Gillian Anderson. You'll have to ignore my copy, it got a bit dented and ripped, but it does not affect my reading experience, so it doesn't really matter. And this is a collection of anonymous fantasies, anonymous stories. I haven't read it yet, so obviously can't speak to the so I can't speak to what extent they are literal fictional fantasies or if they are actual sexual experiences or dreams of the writers, but they are various women who submitted their fantasies and their stories to Bloomsbury and were then collected and chosen by Gillian Anderson. And it's meant to be a exploration through individuals' voices of the expansive nature of women's pleasure and women's sexual fantasies, and I think that is such an interesting concept. And if you saw my recent Instagram post where I recommended non-fiction on the topic of sex, you'll know I think this is a really important topic. I think the topic of sex and pleasure are something we should, when comfortable in the right circumstances, be talking about. I don't think it's something that should be, I don't think it's something that people should be shamed for. So I'm really excited to read this. I think it's a really exciting book to have had such a big like campaign behind it. I don't think 20 years ago this book would have happened. Certainly not in the mainstream way it's happened now. So I think that's really, really, really cool. But those are all the books that I recently brought into my house that were sent to me or I picked up for myself. And so far I've enjoyed every single one I've read. So I've no doubt I'll enjoy all the others as well. But let me know if you've read any of these or if any of them are on your TBR. Which do you think I should read next? And are there any books coming out in 2025 that you're super excited about? Let me know, and until next time, happy reading. Bye everyone.